Hey everybody, this is Dr. Maples. Today I want to talk about gen ed classes. Gen ed, or general education classes, are an unavoidable part of your degree. In fact, half your time at college or university is generally spent working on these classes that aren't in your major and have nothing to do with your interests. That's no fun, right? So what I want to do today is find some ways that we can knock gen ed classes off and make them useful to us. In fact, my mantra for today is going to be that even one class will add up, because every time we can knock a gen ed class out and it have a purpose other than you just have to take it, that's going to be a win for us, a win for our careers, and a win for our degrees. We got a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. All right, folks, today we're talking about gen ed classes. They are a rough use of your time, and they eat up over half your time at the university, but we still got to use them. Can't get away from them. So what I want to do is try to find some ways we can make them useful to your experiences. The first piece of advice I have is a great example of that, and it's some inside advising advice that most professors and certainly almost all students don't know. It's simply this. If you find that you have declared a minor or a second major, and any of the courses in that minor or second major overlap with gen ed classes, you can count them in both places. Let me give you an example. Let's pretend you declared a sociology minor. Now, intro sociology is one of the classes that you would take as a sociology minor, but it's also one of our gen ed classes. So if you've declared a sociology minor or sociology as a second major, more on that in a moment, you could actually count it in towards the minor or towards the second major and towards your gen ed credits. 2 classes for 1 attempt. How cool is that, right? Now, why doesn't this work for first majors? Well, first majors are kind of restricted from ever being part of gen eds. Even though sociology as a first major would always take intro sociology, it's always going to count towards the first major first, and they don't give it that privilege of being able to count in 2 places. Minors and second majors at most universities and colleges don't fall under that rule, and they can count in both places. So talk to your advisor, and if they're not sure, look it up in your university's handbook. And there's a couple of minors and second majors that are really common in gen ed. Sociology is definitely one of them. English, African and African American studies, women gender studies, communications, philosophy, history. There's others depending on what's available at your university. But there's lots of minors that you can fill 2, 3, even 4 classes, maybe more with sociology if you're thoughtful about it. And you can basically knock out a huge chunk of that minor or second major without having to take extra classes. How cool is that, right? Like I said, even one class adds up. Let's find some other ways we can make our gen eds a little more efficient. Now, if you've been watching this channel for any amount of time, you know Dr. Maples is into 2 things. The first one is really cool t-shirts, and the second one is jobs. I want my students to get really cool jobs and get careers that pay really well and make them happy. One of the cool things about gen eds that we don't talk about is that a lot of the classes in gen eds actually relate back to some really cool job skills. Communications is a great example of that. Communications classes are all through gen ed requirements at most universities, and most students can't get away without taking a public speaking course of some kind. But there's also some unexpected ones in there. If you look, sometimes you'll find management and business courses in there, accounting, which is a major job skill that is in big demand, and honestly, if you want to be an accountant, it pays really well. Things too like diversity courses such as sociology. These are all job-related skills. So, if you can't find a way that a minor or a second major overlaps with a gen ed class, look through them and see which one might be a really good job skill. Taking a logic class can also fulfill a gen ed requirement, but it also teaches you how to build an argument. Likewise, applied mathematics are something that we can use in lots of different places in our life. And if it fills a gen ed requirement at the same time, all the better. Like I said, even one class adds up. So look for places where you can get a job skill in a gen ed class and knock out one of your gen ed credits. Now my next 2 tips actually overlap. And this first one, I gotta be honest, it's controversial. One of the big things that I find at universities is they concentrate your gen eds in the first 2 years. And I appreciate that they do that, but I personally think from experience that is a horrible, horrible idea, and it's stunting our students. What I would much, much rather do is have you in some of our major courses from semester 1 or worst case scenario 2 right up till the end of your time at your university. And then we're going to spread out your gen ed classes along the way. Now, there are some exceptions to this. The university almost always is going to expect your first year you're knocking out 2 English classes and a math class. That's fine. But along the way, let's take some classes in your major. Or if you're exploring for a major, let's take some of those intro level classes and find out if a field is right for you. Let's start thinking about careers as a fresh person instead of waiting until we're a junior and senior. The big thing too here is that by taking major courses early and spreading out your GEs, you have far more time to build connections with your professors, the people who are going to teach you the very ideas that you need to be a professional in your field. Likewise, these are the people who are going to write reference letters for you and support you in graduate school and beyond. Heck, I still keep in touch with some of my professors from 20 years ago. That's a big thing for me. Those connections were all because I had time to work with those professors. But unless you're going to graduate school, you may only have a couple of years as a bachelor's degree to do that. So we got to get that relationship process started early when you're a fresh person. Let's not wait until you're junior. So when your advisor tries to throw you in 5 different gen ed classes your first years, tell them, hey, watch this video by Dr. Maples. Let me know what you think, but I'd really like to take some of my major courses in addition to a couple of gen ed classes and spread them out. It's controversial, I told you. In fact, they may not like it. In some universities, this is going to go right in the face of what they tell you, but this is from my experience. I want to get you in this major from day one so that we can build those connections early and make you a better student. Let's talk about this second point because it also connects here. Now, as I said, this next point relates to my last one. While we're spreading those gen ed classes out and taking more major classes early on, I also want to think about taking gen ed classes in summer, winter, or any other alternative terms that your university may offer. Taking summer terms alone can shave a year off your degree without a lot of work, and if your finances and situation allow for it, it can be really awesome. In fact, it really worked for me in saving some time off of my undergraduate degree. But it also has some other advantages. In my experience, both as a student and as a professor, those gen ed classes offered over the summer or during mini terms, they're just a little easier than they are during the main terms. This actually might be a great time for you to take that biology class that you've been putting off because you're not interested in it, but you also know that it's just going to be condensed and you're going to get a whole bunch of information thrown at you, but it's going to be in a smaller class. There's going to be, maybe a little less stress, and maybe they just won't cover as much stuff on the test. Your miles may vary, and some professors may actually make summer courses harder. I don't know, but that's from my experience. Likewise, too, you can usually predict that gen ed classes are offered regularly, and you can actually reach out to a program for a class that you're interested in to see what the offering schedule is for it. For example, all of our sociology gen ed classes at my university are pretty much offered every semester that the university is open, with rare exceptions like our winter term where we only offer a few of them. But every winter term, we even offer the same gen ed, so you can predict what's going to be available. Like I've said before, you can knock out these classes really quickly, one at a time, and anytime we can think of a way to find a gen ed class and make it useful, then that's a way to save some time and make us more successful on the labor market. Let's see what we can do on this next point. Actually, hey, before we get to that next point, could I ask a favor? Are you finding these videos helpful? I enjoy making them, but I actually need your help in getting word about this channel out there. Could you take a moment and text this video to your friends, let them know about the channel, subscribe, like, leave me some comments, even let me know a video that you'd like me to make. I enjoy making these videos as part of my weekends, and I'll be happy to do that just for you. So if you could help me get the word out about this channel, I will help you and other students have a little easier college experience than I did, because mine was pretty rough. But anyways, we'll make it easier. We'll help others by helping each other. So if you can do that, that would be great. Let's get back to our regularly scheduled programming. All right, final one, and this is actually one of my favorites because it helps you manipulate your GPA just a tad bit. Now, if you happen to have a first major that overlaps with a lot of gen ed classes, sociology being a great example, remember your first major classes will never overlap with your gen ed classes when you take them. They're going to count in one place or the other. But if there's a whole bunch of sociology classes in gen ed, which there usually are, you can actually just take a whole bunch of sociology classes while you're also fulfilling your major. What happens is if you take extra sociology classes that aren't required in the major, you've filled up all of your major requirements already, and they're over there in the gen eds, they'll actually start popping up over there. A great example is I suggest all of my students take our diversity and our social problems classes. One of those classes will count towards the major, the other one will fulfill one of their gen ed requirements. with a little bit of planning, you can actually take a whole bunch of classes if you are lucky enough to have a major that overlaps like Gen Ed does, and with Gen Eds like sociology does. And again, remember, philosophy, history, communications, English, WGA, AFA, these are all some programs that frequently overlap between the two. So if you're able to do that, that's awesome. And the cool thing is you can just take a whole bunch more classes in the field that you love. You learn more, you fill your Gen Eds, you graduate a little faster, everybody's happy. Gen Eds, I don't know, they're just miserable things, but we got to get through them, right? What I've done today is give you 5 really good tips for doing that in an efficient way to help you on the job market, to help you learn more about your field, and even get you more involved with your program. I hope you like and subscribe, and you know what, if there's a video I can do for you, let me know, because I'd sure love to make it. That's all I got today, folks. I'll see you next time. Take care. I like my t-shirt. I like my t-shirt.